Welcome to the episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Today we're going to be talking about, well, another iconic motorcycle. This is the Velocette Thruxton, 500 cc's. This is a 1971 model. It's original paint, original seat. Everything on this bike is original. I know that because I'm the first owner of this bike. Velocette went out of business at the end of 1970-71. And they assembled about 50 more bikes. I believe this is one of the bikes that was assembled right after the factory closed with all the parts they had left. Velocette is one of the oldest names in motorcycling. Started in about 1905. I think 1913 was the first year they used Velocette. I think Velocette was the first one. I think that's how they pronounced it. Had nothing to do with being French or Italian. It was just, I'm not quite sure why they chose that name anyway. But their first motorcycle was the Velocette. Always very advanced bikes for the period, handmade motorcycles. But then that day just lasted a long, long time. You had to be a real enthusiast to buy a bike like this back in 1971, because this bike, being a single cylinder and the 500 cc's, actually cost more than a Honda 4, which had, of course, disc brakes and 750 cc's, or even a Triumph Bonneville, which was a twin. These are bikes for real enthusiasts. You either get the Velocette thing or you don't. Incredibly smooth. Compared to a Gold Star, much smoother than a Gold Star. That's a big 500cc BSA single. Makes about 40 to 45 horsepower, something like that, which doesn't sound like a lot nowadays. But for 500cc back in the 60s, that was quite a lot. In fact, I believe Velocette still holds the record for going 100 miles an hour for 24 hours straight in a 500cc single-cylinder motorcycle. I believe that record still stands. But the problem was, by 1971, there's no electric start. There's really not even a key. It's still 6-volt electrics. 1971, still 6 volts. Can you imagine? But that's what they did. Innovative motorcycles back in the day. You can adjust your shocks, moving them forward or backwards. Speedometer, tachometer. These are real racing bikes. These are one of the best handling motorcycles of all time, certainly one of the best handling English motorcycles of all time. They're just wonderful to ride. It's something that's hard to convey until you actually get on it. It's a 4-speed gearbox, shifting on this side, the proper side back in the day. The classic Velocette fishtail exhaust. The Thruxton was pretty much the end of the line. This was their racing bike, so to speak, or their road version of a racing bike. Notice the cutout here for the big Amel carburetor. There's your oil tank right there. That's supposed to keep yourself from burning your leg. Tachometer drive is right there. Brilliant clutch. Has like 20 little springs in it. Setting up the clutch on one of these is really, really very tricky. Velocettes are not like any other motorcycle in the world. I think the reason they don't have the key is most people get frustrated trying to start the thing. It's a kickstart motorcycle, of course. Let me show you a cutaway of the engine here. There are probably as many books on Velocette as almost any British motorcycle, maybe except for the Vincent Black Shadow. These are just 2 of them here. These are 2 excellent examples. Wonderful books, Velocette Technical Excellence and Velocette MSS to Thruxton. The Velocette Owners Club is worldwide. They've got 2,500 to 3,000 members, something like that. And it's a very hardy group. You have to be a real enthusiast to own one of these. And they're so light, they're so nimble. It's unlike any other motorcycle that I've ever ridden. You can cruise all day at 90 miles an hour with these things, 90, 100 miles an hour. You get really good gas mileage. Look at the massive brake up front. I love that beautiful drum brake. See a little air scoop on the side. If you saw that movie, The Last Indian, Burt Munro, remember the famous motorcycle racer from New Zealand? He raced these quite extensively. Actually raced these more than he raced Indians. Small factory, not mass produced. I think in the last years they made about a couple of 100 motorcycles per year, just because they were expensive and labor intensive. And you know, the whole onslaught of Japanese motorcycles in the early 70s, you know, the Kawasaki's and all this kind of stuff, just overwhelmed a small company like this. So this is your classic British stiff upper lip kickstart motorcycle. Even starting it is a whole separate procedure. I'll show you how you start it right now. Turn on both your fuel taps. This is your big tickler right here. These take a lot of fuel. You know, back by 71, having to tickle your carburetor and have gasoline drop on the ground. That was not cool. Most bikes were electric start by this point. What you do with one of these, let's see if I remember. Kick it through a few times, get the fuel in there. Bring it up on compression. Pull the compression release in. What the compression release does is lifts the exhaust valve so you can drop it through, bring it back up. Let's see if it starts. One kick, look at that. Obviously modern motorcycles are incredible, but there's something about classic motorcycles just so appealing. You know, you're so involved with every aspect of the bike, and you really have to know your mechanics to get them to operate properly. This wasn't a motorcycle that a non-enthusiast could buy. You know, it's funny, when this bike came out in 1971, it still looked like something from the 30s. It just has that classic English styling. There's no plastic on it, everything is metal, but it's still incredibly light and a wonderful handling bike. Oh, these actually beat a lot of the big twins. One thing you don't want to do is sit at the stoplight with the clutch in on a Velo. You know, most British 500cc bikes at 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, the tack needle's going like that, you can't even follow it. But on a Velocette, it's incredibly smooth. Always put the bike in neutral as you approach a stoplight on a Velocette, because you'll never get it neutral at the light. When you get this clutch set up properly, there's no better shifting bike. Just touch it with your toes and it drops right in. The real trick, getting that clutch set up properly. It's really kind of fun to own a bike so long that it becomes a classic in your lifetime. I guess it just means I'm really old. Quite a number of guys use these for touring as well. Everything is mechanical about a Velocette, not even hydraulic brakes. That being said, there's really no excuse for 6-volt electrics as late as 1971. But they do work okay. But this is not a bike for traffic. No turn signals. The only concession to modern stuff is probably the brake light. To me, this is the prettiest side of this motorcycle, the exhaust side, that distinctive fishtail muffler on the back. Nothing else looks like a Velocette. It's just a classic English 500cc single-cylinder motorcycle. As I said before, even when this bike came out in 1971, it still looked like a bike, a racing bike from the 30s. But you know, motorcyclists tend to be pretty traditional. They don't like a lot of change. But all your Japanese bikes with the electric starts and their reliability and all those good points, that hurt Velocette. These were handmade motorcycles and they were expensive to produce. But the real thing was they were produced by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. I just love how slim this bike is. You know, most 500cc bikes, you take them up to 70 or 80 and your hands get tired because they're so fuzzy, but not this thing. Velocettes are not bikes that sit in collections. Guys use them. That's the fun thing. You know, the Velocette Club's very active. You know, most modern bikes, when you want to make a U-turn, you got to put both feet down to kind of paddle around a little bit because they're so heavy. This thing is so light, you can make a U-turn in your own lane. But, you know, you get these motors up over $5 grand and you just think it's really fantastic. These bikes got a reputation here in America of being somewhat fragile, but that was because of the clutch. Guys who come to a light, hold the clutch in for 10 minutes, then the thing will overheat, and then it would get crabby, and you just have to know how to operate one of these, and they're fine. Make no mistake, it's a bit more work driving these bikes, but it's certainly well worth it. Here you have your vents and retard for ignition right here. Tighten down your steering dampener right here. Speedometer, tachometer, headlight switch, high-low beam, clutch, and of course your compression release right here, which you use to lift the exhaust valve so you can kick it through. Let's take it out on the freeway, see how she cruises. Now, this is about the only British single where I never felt the need for a fifth gear. My BSA Gold Star's got a 5-speed in it. We put it after the fact, obviously it didn't come that way. But this thing, the 4-speed seemed nicely spaced. Even though it handles the highway fine, this is really a fast 2-lane road bike, you know what I mean? You get on those twisties where you can maintain 60 or 70 miles an hour. Just fantastic. As I said before, this is the only British single I've ridden that you can cruise at 75 or 80 on the freeway and not feel like your watch is gonna fall off your hand from the vibration. Just incredibly smooth. 4th gear almost feels like an overdrive. And you gotta admit, it's a great looking bike. There aren't many British single-cylinder bikes that'll sit and idle. Apparently this isn't one of them either. But that's okay. I just pulled it in the garage and I shut it off. I hope you enjoyed this little chance to look at some classic vintage English motorcycles. You know, the nice thing about Velocette is every single part is available. The club is unbelievable. They make everything for this bike. So if you have one, they're very easy to restore. Well, not easy to restore, but certainly easier because all the parts are available. The Velocette Club is a fantastic group. All the technical help you need. We didn't go into as much detail about the bike in terms of the internals and the brakes and all this other kind of stuff. You can look that up on Google if you're interested. I just want to give you a chance to see what a real motorcycle is like. See you next week.